We do anticipate more folks will be joining us here as we start the morning too, but thank you for those who have arrived already. As you saw in the chat, please rename yourself with your CISA number and then your first and last name. When you hover over, you should be able to see the three dots in the upper right-hand corner. When you click on those, you should see rename at the bottom of the list. If you need your CISA number, just let us know in the chat and we'll make sure to provide that to you. So again, welcome to the Academy. I am Tanya Anderson Ruskin. I am the Regional Special Education Network Director, or RSN, for CISA 10. This Academy is brought to you by the RSN and the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, along with the Wisconsin Council of Administrators of Special Services, or WCAS. And we're happy to have you here today. This year's a little bit different as we strive to be more inclusive and meet the needs of all directors in Wisconsin. Our agenda for the Academy has been full. We recently conducted a survey and we really appreciate feedback that you've provided so that we can make these sessions meaningful to you. And we will look forward to doing that as we create our agendas for next school year. As you saw scrolling on the screen, the expectations for the meeting, please, we ask you to turn your cameras on if you're able to, if you're in a space that is conducive to that, and just be mindful of the space around you. Please mute your microphone unless you are trying to speak. And then we ask that you use the parking lot for any questions that you might have, so that way we can monitor and make sure that those questions are answered, whether in the session or following the session. And then also the chat, we ask that you use that for focus topics related to the content that we're presenting, or if you have questions for the speaker. And then again, that those conversations benefit the whole of the group. So those are our meeting expectations. Again, thank you for joining us today. We are going to just hand off quickly for a WCAS update. I see Jen Ladine is on, but I know Tracy also is prepared just to give us a little overview of the WCAS Spring Conference.
I'll
Tracy?
let Jen take that one.
Okay.
Well, good morning. I'm Jen Ladine. I am one of the committee chairs for the Professional Learning Committee with WCAS. Just a couple of updates on our spring conference. The spring conference will be held in Appleton at the Paper Valley. It will be held on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of May. So that is a Wednesday through Friday. We are anticipating a pre-conference session on Wednesday afternoon on, I believe, IEP writing, and including explicit instructional practices and items like that. More details to come on that. The 2-day conference will be on Thursday and Friday, the 2nd and 3rd. Our keynote speaker on Thursday is Percy Brown. He will be speaking with us about elevating student voice in the work that we do. Thursday afternoon, we will be having a closing keynote on Act 20 and implications for special education. That will be presented by Laura Adams and Patty Williams from DPI. On Wednesday morning, our keynote will be Joe Sanfilippo. He will be speaking on Lead from Where You Are, his latest book. And we will continue our WCAS roundtable conversations on Wednesday as well on a variety of topics. Our committee is meeting. We met this morning and we are meeting again Friday morning to finalize the agenda. The overall theme for the spring conference is the modern role of the special ed director. So we're going to be trying to highlight some new things that have come up in our work over the last several years, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I guess you could say, and how to navigate those things. And so I feel that the keynote speakers that we've secured and the breakout sessions that we are putting together are all going to provide you with some great information around that topic. I believe we are shooting to have registration open within the next several weeks, certainly by the end of March, if not sooner. And I think that's about all I have to say about that at this point. Once again, the dates are the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and at the Paper Valley in Appleton.
All right. Well, that was a very comprehensive update, Jen, and it sounds like an amazing conference. I would just say on behalf of all the directors, thank you to the conference committee and your board too for making those offerings very worthwhile. So thank you for that extra time that you put in to do that. For folks joining today, we just want to remind you that there is a participant folder for resources that are presented. And again, we want to remind you to use the parking lot for questions that you might have. Any unanswered questions, our team will work to make sure that we get those answers for you and get that out. As you did see the recording notice, these sessions are recorded and we will have those available to you after they're reviewed and vetted. We are in the process of getting a link fixed for the January recording. So we've had some folks say that that one's not working. We're aware of that and are working with the team to get that fixed. So for our agenda today, we do have a mandated reporting update from Julian City. So that's going to be the start of our session today. And then we will end with the Transition Improvement Grant with Pam Jensen. We're happy to have Julie with us. We know there were questions that popped up at the start of the year. It was probably a great example of you know, folks coming from the field, from WCAS and DPI working together to make sure that we're clear on messaging and that we could move forward to benefit our students. So we're happy to have Julie with us today, and I will hand it off to Julie.
Great, thank you. I was on a presentation this morning and there was an echo on my voice. How is it sounding okay right now? Not sure. We're okay. Okay, phew. Okay, that's wonderful. Yeah, so thanks. I've been invited to give an update at this. When I originally accepted, it was going to be an update or information about the training that has been up since August, but now obviously there's been some changes and revisions that we're working really hard with DCF and DOJ and a lot of different stakeholders, including WCAS. And so I'm going to just kind of talk through where this all came from and where we're at now and where we're heading. So please feel free to jump in with questions or put something in the chat. But I wanted to start by grounding us. The Department of Children and Families is really focused right now on updating their workforce and moving the field forward in their strategic plan that's called Putting Families First. This stems from federal legislation that changed in 2018 that shifted federal funding from being available only after a child was removed from the home and placed into out-of-home care to having that funding available to actually keep children in their homes when it's safe to do so by having money to be able to wrap supports and services around families. This shift nationally happened because the research and lived experience and best practice shows us that it's actually better in many cases, in most cases, to keep kids in their homes with their families, again, when it's safe to do so. And knowing that removals can be traumatic, even for short lengths of time for families. And of course, our systems are continuously working on reducing harm instead of creating or perpetuating harm. So right now, the Department of Children and Families is going around the state doing different stakeholder meetings and town halls, and they're using this video just to sort of do some grounding and to provide some discussion for those sessions. And again, it's not specific to mandated reporting, but mandated reporting is the entryway into out-of-home care for children, or it's certainly a part of this whole system of making sure that children are protected and safe, and that we're supporting families in their homes. So I'm gonna play this video just to do some grounding for us. There is an instrumental noise in the background. Are you hearing that? No. Okay, I just realized I couldn't share that sound, so let's just try this one more time.
Julie, I am not hearing it.
Okay, it's really just instrumental. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, folks can read the screen. All right, so you can see in there just really trying to shift some narratives. This video brings up a lot of different emotions for me. This is difficult topic, this is difficult work. We are all trying to do our best, and we're just in a process of transformation and trying to figure out how to do that best, how to have the best outcomes that we can. That video is available on the Department of Children and Families website as well. If you type in Putting Families First, they have a whole toolkit for communications, including that video. So when DPI started this work around updating our training and guidance for mandated reporters, for school staff who are mandated reporters, we started with this question of what guidance would help school staff come to better decisions related to establishing reasonable cause. This drove our work originally 2 years ago and in this last school year as well. We knew that the laws had not changed for mandated reporting. And again, we were just looking at our guidance and how could that be improved, really thinking about that process that happens for an educator to determine, okay, I have reasonable cause. I have information that leads me to believe that I suspect child abuse or neglect is happening in this case. And of course, knowing that once in school, a mandated reporter has reasonable cause, they need to immediately report to CPS or local law enforcement. Again, so those two things have not changed. no laws on mandated reporting have changed, and that mandate to report child maltreatment certainly exists and is very important in terms of keeping kids safe. So why are changes needed if the law didn't change? Well, due to the impact of over-reporting and how that disproportionately impacts certain groups and certain families in Wisconsin as well as nationally. But then there are other reasons I'll talk about. To better support families with resources, again, really moving towards a more hopeful system instead of one that might be impacting trauma, causing trauma, and to better align the reporting practices with those values of putting families first, which is that strategic initiative happening in the child welfare system. So just to explain a little bit further on these points, when I talk about the impact of over-reporting, I think it's important to note that nationally, 53% of African American children experience a CPS investigation by the time they're 18 years old. So that number is staggering, 53%. We're seeing similar numbers in Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a number of big disparities when it comes to African American and Native American students, Indigenous students, kids and families. And we know that in Wisconsin, for example, in 2022, 65% of reports for neglect from education personnel, from school staff were screened out. So we know that there's a big need to help staff differentiate between poverty and neglect, right? So neglect is when, for reasons other than poverty. But unfortunately, a lot of reports are made when really the family just needs supports, basic resources. There's, the parents are trying, but their trying still looks like neglect, but it's really poverty. There are cases where there is neglect by parents, and those do need to be reported. But how can we help staff better differentiate between those two? And the information about the reports being screened out just means that that's a lot of, confusion to the system. That's a lot of time and effort put into the system. That's a lot of funding that is spent that doesn't necessarily need to be. I've heard from county supervisors saying, gosh, we have to wade through so many reports. Sometimes we can't really focus our efforts on the families that need them. And can we be thinking about making a report isn't the end or the beginning of supporting a family? So helping staff think, wow, I could connect with my school social worker, or my school counselor who knows about basic resources in our community. That's really what this family is needing. And I just didn't know how else to access those kinds of basic resources. So, some staff think, oh, I can just call CPS and that'll get family support. But we know that, calling CPS has other implications, that CPS involvement is not benign. And it can lead to, other decisions later on in the system. So how can we make those better reports? So again, the second point of better supporting families with resources, this is part of that mindset shift for staff to understand that, CPS generally does not have special access to resources to help with basic needs. It's not meant to be a safety net. There is, there's over, 50,000 different nonprofit and community organizations in Wisconsin. And part of our work is to help families become aware of those and to connect to them and perhaps make a warm handoff or a referral to those services. But CPS is really there for when abuse is already happening. And there's a big spectrum of support and needs that families have before we get to that level. That involvement is not benign. It can lead to some unintended consequences and some poor outcomes. And that, we can support families with resources. Again, in the past, there's staff I've talked to who say, oh, well, I made a report, so, my job is done here. And it's like, well, actually, how can you continue, even increase your support for the student at school? Can we check in with them more often and just be making connections to peers, making connections to leadership opportunities, making sure that they're feeling the support so that school can be a safe place for them, even if other places in their life are not. And that third point I made about why we needed to change our guidance around mandated reporting is to better align with the values of putting families first. So this is where the child welfare system is really looking to serve more children, youth, and families in home with supportive services and to strengthen local communities. And as I mentioned, regardless of length, removals have been long associated with negative outcome for children and families. So the values are co-planning, working with parents, seeing parents as partners, seeing parents as the solution, seeing community members as part of the solution, and more collaboration between local school districts and local child welfare agencies, between DPI and DCI. But really, it's the local communities. The challenges and strengths in each community are going to be different. The policies, the processes, the procedures in each local community are going to be different. So DPI and DCF, we put out, guidance, best practice, information, but you really should be guided by your local child welfare agency and your local law enforcement. That's going to really provide you with the best information for your context. So we released this new training on August 2nd of last year. How was it received? Many of you are well aware of how it was received. There was both positive and negative responses. So, some of the positive was around just broadening our understanding of these issues, of more of an awareness of how our worldview and experience might be impacting our decisions as mandated reporters. To think about, the role of CPS and what it is and what it isn't. And then there were some concerns. There was concerns that the training was too long. I will mention that California's training is 8 hours. New York's is 2. This one was about an hour and a half, but I digress. So the training was too long, the training was too complicated, that it left people confused. And certainly we want people to be challenged, but not confused. There were some concerns about a misunderstanding that we were maybe inviting or telling school staff to do more of an interview type process with students, which is not the intention at all. And yes, those are some of the main concerns there. So what we did is we regrouped. We said, you know what, our stakeholder feedback is very important to us. We don't want people to be confused. Let's take another look at this. So since September, October of this school year, a work group at DPI has been working very closely with DCF, with DOJ, I have a 85 member stakeholder list that has had the chance to review the training content and provide feedback, and we have made adjustments based on that feedback. So that is the process that's going on right now. Really hoping to have that new training available by May. By May of this school year is the idea, and then that will be the only training available. So, on our website, if you're looking for these materials, you would type in child abuse and neglect or child abuse or spelling it incorrectly gets you there too. That gets you to this web page where everything is going to be. So you can see currently we do have 2 training versions available, the version from 2021 and the version from 2023. So hopefully by May, this will be updated and you will only see one version. You'll see the 2024 version available. It will continue to be in online module form, in these YouTube videos available just as videos, and then a PowerPoint for a local in-service training. And the local in-service can continue to include the local presenter, working off of the script and using the slides. The local in-service could also be a presenter hosting a video, playing the video segments and encouraging discussion among staff to go through the content. So what is this new 2024 version slated to look like? So it is cut down now so that it will be an hour for staff to accomplish. And we worked really hard to get it to that hour timeline. Again, there's just a lot of really important information, and it is, every 5 years only is a requirement. We do encourage local districts to provide updated training, shorter versions, using the PowerPoint or maybe just one or two of the videos in between every 5 years, but the full version is meant to be an hour. It will be similar to how it feels now with some text, very short text around the intro, and then the different video clips that folks will click into and watch. It was really important to our stakeholders that we provide more examples because there is no one definition of reasonable cause to suspect child abuse or neglect that everyone in Wisconsin agrees on. There is not case law except back from the 80s, the 1980s. And that case law is actually, I'm going to get into it and I'll describe it, but it's not very instructive in a way that we can all say, yep, we all know exactly what that means. So that necessitates more learning through examples. And so we do have 9 different examples that we are including, and then there'll be some additional examples that can be optional. But we are going to run through the basics of our own obligation, responding to disclosures, and all of the definitions as well. So there are some things that brought some concern, some phrases that brought some concern to our stakeholders from the last version that you will not see in this current training. Mandated supporter, while nationally this term is very common in the literature and in discussions, we do not have a mandate in Wisconsin statute. There is nowhere in Wisconsin statute that says school staff must be mandated supporters. And so we have removed that phrase, but the ideas and intention behind it still remain. We are still encouraging staff, especially pupil service staff and folks who have that information, to be supporters, to be boosting support to families, but you won't see that term. You will not see the term move away from the mindset of when in doubt, report. Again, sort of the message behind it is still there. We really want to shift this mindset, and this is happening nationally as well as in Wisconsin. But what's not a helpful phone call for CPS is a phone call that says, I don't think that this is child abuse or neglect. I'm just calling you because I have to cover my liability. If a school staff doesn't believe it's child abuse and neglect, that means they've determined they don't have reasonable cause to believe that there is child abuse and neglect. So we want to allow staff to have that critical thinking, especially related to situations of neglect. Neglect does not happen overnight. Neglect is very complex. We want to make sure that staff are gathering some, thinking about some information and the information that they have when they are determining whether or not they have reasonable cause. And then you won't see the phrase minimum facts interviewing. So that has very specific meaning in the criminal justice world. The intention was not to have staff doing forensic interviews or to interview staff, students in any way. So you're not going to see that phrase. Again, the guidance is focused on this piece of this idea about neglect. So, there might be times when staff have to make sure they have the information that tells them that they have reasonable cause to suspect neglect. That might involve gathering some information. But we also have examples and more clear language in the new training about, hey, there are times when it's very clear that you have reasonable cause. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, very clear, make that report immediately. It's really just this, thinking more about neglect. So there are some pieces from the original training, well, quite a few pieces that were removed, but we are hoping that, throughout next school year, we might be able to put some of these on our website as resources for, optional learning. That would be things like some of the policy considerations for your schools around how do you prevent child abuse and maltreatment, especially sexual maltreatment at school and by educators. We know that 1 in 10 students will experience some type of adult sexual misconduct before they graduate from high school, and we want to reduce those numbers. We will maintain the video on the structure of child protective services. So that's not in the current version, but that whole video is able to be an option. And then information on adverse childhood experiences and trauma-sensitive schools, and then background on the Indian Child Welfare Act and the Wisconsin Indian Child Welfare Act will be optional. So I've been talking about this, what you will continue to see in the training. It's shorter, it's streamlined. There's clarity around that duty to report. We will continue to have a consideration of bias and using professional judgment and considering your worldview. We will continue to boost support for families and encouraging tips on responding to a disclosure. And there will be the basic information around definitions. So let's talk a little bit about this reasonable cause. Reasonable cause from this 1986 court case says specifically a belief based on evidence, but short of proof that an ordinary person would reach as to the existence of child abuse. What does that mean? What does that mean? So maybe you have your law degree and this makes a lot of sense to you, but we have staff, of all different backgrounds and understandings, and even the lawyers don't all agree on what this means. So this is what we and our stakeholders have kind of come up with some of this language. What does reasonable cause mean in plain language? Reasonable cause to suspect does not require proof, but is an honest belief based on information obtained from sources that may include the individual subject to abuse or neglect, personal observation, information learned from others, and or written documentation that a child has or will be subject to abuse or neglect. So we want staff to consider the whole picture of what you know about the situation. In past iterations of the training, way back in like 2012, we used a phrase that said firsthand knowledge. You must have firsthand knowledge of the maltreatment. However, that is not accurate. It's not in statute that you have to have firsthand knowledge. So this language, I think, is much more clear. It's about the whole picture of what you know, and this information may not only come from the individual, it might come from your observation, information learned from others, and written documentation. When we're thinking about, do I have reasonable cause, really making sure staff do understand the definitions of child maltreatment, or know where to find them, know where to sort of reflect on them. So we want to start with those definitions and then consider if the information that you have, that whole picture, does it meet one of the definitions or types of maltreatment, or does it seem to? I mean, staff aren't going to be expected to know the statutes, back and forth, but having a reasonable sense of what the statutes say about abuse and neglect, about the definitions. So we have a whole section in the updated training about, when there are times when reasonable cause is very clear, there are times when reasonable cause is unclear. So in those cases where staff have reasonable cause, report, and we give some examples like I've mentioned. Then we get into talking about how when it's unclear, neglect is very complex. It happens over time. It doesn't happen overnight. And more information may be needed in these cases to establish reasonable cause. So as I said, there's 9 examples in the training. There's actually more than that. There's 9 examples that follow the specific format. There's a few short examples embedded into the content as well. And the format of the example will start with the basic scenario, a consideration for the staff to consider how their worldview might be impacting their decision-making, whether or not reasonable cause exists, the actions required by statute, and some additional optional actions that staff could take if they choose to, and that would be best practice to take. It's important to know that in these examples, the scenario was written and the determination about whether or not reasonable cause exists in those scenarios was made. And then later, we went back in and added demographic information, cultural, racial, socioeconomic status kind of information into the examples to encourage staff to consider, again, how their biases might be showing up or how their worldview might be showing up. So I say that to mean that those demographics and information about the individuals did not tell us whether or not reasonable cause exists. Reasonable cause is about the information you have about maltreatment. Those were added in later, again, just to help staff think, yeah, maybe I do have a bias here or a worldview that's impacting my decision. So I just want to walk through one of the examples that we have in the training. So for example, an Among American 10-year-old student says to you that they weren't given dinner the night before and they are hungry at school. That's the scenario, and this is a real scenario that has happened in my life as a school social worker. So then the next step is we ask staff, how might your life experiences or worldview impact your thinking about the situation? Would you, feel differently if the student and family had different demographics, different socioeconomic status? Can your feelings about the situation be attributed to different parenting styles or, ways that our families have cultural values around meals and eating, right? So we're asking staff to just make those considerations. And then we ask staff, do you have reasonable cause to suspect child maltreatment? And in this example, no, we do not have reasonable cause to suspect child maltreatment. The only information that we have is that a student says to us they didn't eat dinner the night before. So then we ask staff, what actions must you take? And in this case, since there's no reasonable cause, the law does not require you to take action regarding this situation. But we invite staff to consider, are there additional steps you could take, even though you're not legally required to do so? In this case, staff could express concern for the student and let them know that they care about them. You ask the student what they mean, and the student says that their family was busy running between activities, so they ate cereal, but not dinner, not meat potatoes that they normally have. So you give the student a healthy snack from your donated classroom supply. And so this is just, the situation could have turned out differently. And we give examples that there is reasonable cause, and we explain why there was reasonable cause. For example, in this situation, let's say the student says they didn't get dinner and the teacher says, oh, what do you mean by that? And the student says, yeah, my parents use their money in other ways. They're not making sure that we as kids have food for, any day. We're only eating at school. My parents have money, they're spending it, they're spending it on other things for themselves. They're not concerned that I'm not getting food, right? In that case, then yes, that's neglect. We need to make a report. So just giving these types of examples in the training. So I'll just pause here for a moment and just seeing what's an aha, what's resonating, what questions do you have?
At this time, maybe, are there any questions in the parking lot?
Okay, great, it's clear. So I'm going to invite us all just actually to take a moment. There is, you can just zap this on your phone or put in this tiny URL. I can also copy this and put it in the chat. I just wanted to have everyone, there's a lot of different research, and if you're interested in it, I'm happy to share it with you. Some of the best practice information, as well as some of the academic research that's been done on mandated reporting recently. And that, is sort of some of the background for some of these changes. So I'm just going to actually be silent, give you a chance, for a couple of minutes here, just to read on your own some of the research from the field. All right, so some of you had a chance to sort of look at some of this information. Any reflections on this or questions that you still might have? Okay, again, I have many different ones, information if you're looking for background or if that helps you in putting together a presentation for your staff or having discussions with your staff. I'm happy to share. So I did want to just also give you a chance to give me information, or let's think together. What do your staff need to make better decisions about supporting and reporting families? And how do we help staff differentiate between poverty and neglect? So I'd love to hear great stuff that's happening in school districts. Anybody having some really wonderful discussions or training? What are you doing that's really working well that you could share? Or what do you still need from the state or from your local agency to help staff make better decisions?
Julie, as folks are thinking, I know I made some notes too as you were speaking that you had some great points too. You talked about collaboration, I think, with families, but also across departments. And that's something that I've had experience with, that there's been a lot of work put into meeting with counties to look at how they're serving families, how schools serve families. But I feel like that's something that is going to be an ongoing process, especially when we talk about what is neglect and providing resources so that folks clearly understand that, but also what are resources, because those continue to change too. So those are just two things in my mind, is that we need to continue building these relationships with each other. Sometimes there's been barriers about we can't speak about certain things, or even trying to involve folks in teaming. So I think that's something that we should be mindful of too, is that if there are barriers that exist, how do we break those down?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. You're reminding me of a number of different things. One is that when I started my job here at DPI, my predecessor, Nick Dibble, said to me, what I learned is that if you want to change something, it's going to take at least 20 years. So my timeline for moving us all forward is a 20-year timeline. I'm hoping in 20 years, our systems will be working better together. We will have better outcomes for our families. Yeah, this all takes time. And we're, like I said at the beginning, we're all in it together. We are all trying to figure this out, and we're going to make some mistakes, and we're going to learn some really great stuff. So we're just trying to do our best. And it does start with relationships and discussions amongst our families, amongst our stakeholders, amongst our community partners. And it also is going to take a lot of system shifting. So one system shifting is happening in the Department of Children and Family, like in child welfare itself, right? So just because, them at the state level are saying, okay, now we're on this idea to keep kids in homes, and when it's safe to do so, and, this is where our philosophy is changing. That doesn't mean that in every county, every social worker's, there already. Their mindsets are in different places. And so we're all coming along, but they are doing, this work with their workforce, as well. And so we're seeing different people in different spaces of the continuum with that. It also means that in Wisconsin, we have to build better systems of support. So I'm just showing you here, Five for Families has a searchable database for 211. This you can put in and get local information about these different categories. So things like this, there's the family, I'm blanking on the name right now for some reason, but there's other supports that but anyway, so Wisconsin as a system, we have to build better supports. For example, in New York State, they have created a helpline that's mandated reporters can call, that's not CPS, it's for resources, referral, and support. And so, what more can Wisconsin do so that when there's a caring, compassionate school staff member that has a concern about a kid or a family that's not maltreatment, that they have somebody to call, they can do something. They want to help, and we want them to help, but we have to have the resources so they can help, so they can refer. And so Wisconsin's still looking at building that. And there are really great people and great minds working on that, both in child welfare as well as in the policy arenas. The Institute for Child and Family at UW Milwaukee has been doing a lot of great work. They have a podcast around neglect and just helping our systems better understand what neglect is and how to support families that are facing neglect. And so again, I can throw these things in the chat before I leave. That's the Institute for Child and Family. So yeah, any other, where were we? What other thoughts do we have on helping staff? What do you need from state or local?
I'm curious about that distinction, Julie, between poverty and neglect, especially when we are in, especially for districts that have high poverty rates, and and poverty is kind of the norm. Then how do we make that jump? It's a little bit more glaring in a district where there's a more even distribution, so to speak, of those. It could be a little easier to spot, but I'm just curious about that piece of it.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I don't think that it is easy to spot either way. I mean, it takes getting into the context a little bit, talking with discussions with families. Again, this is talking about neglect. I think, and we see cases of neglect across the state, and we see reports made that aren't neglect across the state. So I think more of the examples can be instructive to help us, and really realizing that neglect doesn't happen overnight. So it's not typically a crisis situation. It's a crisis situation, but not an acute, like we have to make assumptions and jump in. Right now we sometimes actually just can be really helpful to get a little bit more information, to get the idea of the context, to talk to the student about, ask a clarifying question. What do you mean by that? Check in with other information and resources that you have about the situation. And then, there's the red flags, things where probably shouldn't say that. So the examples in our training should be helpful. It's hard. And that's where we want mandated reporters to consult with principals and, pupil service staff who have more experience with this. And again, really the consultation with the child welfare agency, the local child welfare agency, to help us understand in our community, what are you seeing for substantiated neglect, right? That could be really helpful. If they say, like, these are the cases, this is their examples in our community of families where neglect has been substantiated, this is what it looks like. I think that could be helpful too.
Excuse me, I'd like to interject. This is Catherine Strong down in Benton. 25 years ago, I was a county social worker going out and doing child abuse and neglect investigations. In addition to my caseload of 100 families. With working with our county system here, I see our social services system is suffering much the way the educational system is, with the lack of workers and caseload overloads. One, I just want to point out, probably 80% of the child abuse and neglect investigations I went on back then was one parent reporting on another parent trying to get dirt to go into court for divorce proceedings. So please keep that in mind when we are working with staff to process through, is this actually neglect? Is this a matter of endangerment to the child? Or is it what truly is behind here? Because it was exasperating and such a waste of county and state resources. So.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And it's a little bit challenging. Again, like I said, I think, it'll take time and practice for us as systems and in our training with our school staff and for school staff themselves as they grow and develop in their careers. And we're not asking staff to be the investigators or to know, for sure, and to be the ones that substantiate or not. That's the child welfare professional's role. So, it's that just giving staff the permission to use some critical thinking when they're considering situations. And then hopefully through these increased collaborations with our local agencies, we'll all get better at identifying it.
I did see that Caroline had her hand raised. Caroline, did you still want to speak?
Tracy, you're so kind. Julie, I just want to affirm your point about collaboration. I think what has worked is when encouraging staff members to have a thought partner when they're thinking about a situation, and especially a thought partner that has background in this area, like a counselor, a social worker, or an administrator that deals with this kind of stuff. And I like your point about not forgetting that the goal is to help and engage families. So yeah, when you asked about like what's worked, I would just definitely say where I see mistakes in my districts or in those around me, it's, sometimes when people are operating on an island and they don't have a ton of background, good intention, but not a ton of background. So having a thought partner is always helpful.
For sure. Thank you so much for that. All right, I think I have used my time, but I will put my email in the chat. I'm very happy to receive your feedback, positive, negative, neutral, otherwise. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Julie, for the additional information that you provided. We thank you for taking the time to join us today, and do feel free to reach out to Julie with questions that you have, and we'll continue to share resources that come our way as well. So with that, we're going to take a 10-minute break before we move into our next topic for the Transition Improvement Grant. So we will see you back at 11 o'clock. Welcome you back from So up next, we have Pam Jensen from the Transition Improvement Grant. We welcome Pam, and I will hand it off to you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Pam Jensen, and I work with the Transition Improvement Grant. I am the Assistant Project Coordinator, and joining me today is also Jen Hilgendorf, and I'll have her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me join today. My name is Jen Hilgendorf, and I also work with the Transition Improvement Grant and support the implementation and improvement work with our project.
Great. If somebody can give me a thumbs up that they can see my screen, that would be great.
Yes, we can. Thank you, Pam.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you for allowing us to come and join your meeting today. It's a great opportunity for us to share what we do around transition and to give you some resources and tools that you can utilize as well. So during this session, we'll be presenting an overview of the TIG website, providing important transition updates, and then also sharing some information regarding tools and resources that TIG can offer around joint federal notifications. This video is just a video that will share a little bit more about what TIG is, and I'll let you watch that at your own convenience. But TIG really supports the continuous improvement and technical assistance in order to change adult practices and district policies that positively impact graduation rates and post-school outcomes for students with IEPs, with an increased focus on closing those gaps in accessing the achievement and gaps of students of color. So the TIG structure currently has 3 pillars of work: the transition assistance, or the technical assistance work group, the implementation and improvement work group, and then an evaluation coordinator who works with both of our work groups. When we look at the technical assistance work group side of our work, we provide universal technical assistance supports. And so we really look at statewide technical assistance for districts. We do monthly compliance of the PTP plan. All of our information and resources are based on evidence-based, research-based, and promising practices. Some resources that are commonly used are the Wisconsin app, the Google Sites, toolkits, and self-advocacy guidance. And we'll talk about those in a little bit as well. We also have some online learning. We'll talk about a transition coordinator network that is the last Tuesday of every month, and then transition partners with our local, statewide, and national levels, along with an accessible website. We also have some targeted supports that are around a CCOT pilot project. I will share a little bit more later, our career and life readiness course, and our indicator 14 interviewer training. So within our team is a TA project coordinator, myself. We have 3 TA specialists, Jenny, Shelley, and Ann. Our evaluation coordinator, Lisa Van Dyke, and then Jenny Jacobs also is our indicator 14 coordinator. And I'll let Jen share about implementation and improvement.
So the other side of our work is around supporting school districts who have been federally identified, particularly in graduation and dropout, and really supporting them through the continuous improvement process and identifying and installing a evidence-based practice. So the goal of this work group is to work intensively with school districts for 3 to 5 years and strategically identify what of one of the graduation improvement pillars they would like to dig into and help to develop a plan to make that be supportive for students with IEPs within their district. As we go through that process, we first work with school districts to conduct a data analysis and a root cause analysis, identify which evidence-based practice they would like to focus on, develop an action plan and a SMART goal, and then provide ongoing support to the schools as they're doing that. So that support could be through technical assistance and professional development, and then also coaching of the implementation and supporting the school to make database decisions as they go through the work. The transition pillars that I mentioned are in our tool, the Wisconsin Graduation Rate Improvement Plan, and those pillars come from the research of the National Technical Assistance Center, the Collaborative, and the National Dropout Prevention Center, as well as evidence-based practices highlighted through the IES What Works Clearinghouse. This work group is made up of myself, the implementation and improvement project coordinator, and then we have 4 implementation specialists who work directly in school districts. We have Jen Dumond, Julie Malagan, Megan Rourke, and Robin Scholes. And then we also work closely with the evaluation specialist, Lisa Van Dyke. So as I had mentioned, that work that we have with our evaluation specialist in the grant really helps us to, as a project, as TIG, to be able to utilize a logic model and a multi-level protocol to assess our impact and the practices that we have on changing educator adult practice, looking at professional learning and student outcomes. So as you can see on the screen, these are some of the questions that we research as a team, working to also make database decisions on how our project can best serve Wisconsin schools.
It really has 4 major content areas: indicator 1, graduation rates; indicator 2, dropout rates; indicator 13, transition planning in the IEP; and indicator 14, which are the post-school outcomes. To the right side of this slide, you'll see the categories that address these content areas. We have the PTP, or the post-secondary transition plan, the Wisconsin Transition App, which focuses on the indicator 13, the graduation rate improvement plan that Jen just alluded to address indicators 1 and 2, and then the indicator 14 survey to address post-school outcomes for students with IEPs. We're just going to take just a few minutes to share some logistics of our TIG website. On the homepage is where you can access the different sections of the website. And then the tabs on the right side of this slide are found at the top of that homepage. Each tab brings the user to another page. So for example, TIG highlights the purpose, the event, registration, and an overview of events that TIG is hosting. Resources has the search engine to find transition-related materials, contact of how you can utilize to find anyone on our staff that we just mentioned, and then the login provides access to create or access a TIG account if you already have one. On this slide, you'll see is a resource tab. And this is simply where you can find your resources. You can narrow that search. You can, by checking the content areas. And then once you find a resource, you can bookmark it. You can copy the link so that you can share it with others. And then you can also share it on various media platforms. So if you find a resource within our site that you feel would be really beneficial to others, you have lots of different options on ways to save it and share it. And then we also have our login as another important tab that has multiple opportunities. Once you log in, the user can see their name at the top, and then by clicking the account tab, as you can see on this slide, the user can change their email address, their role, their district, their school or organization, as well as their password. This is also where users can delete their account, which we hope you won't do, but is the place you can do that. And this tab is also important, especially if you change jobs, so that you can update your account. The user dashboard is another area that can update the profile, and a great place that you can save your resources so that once you come back to the site, you don't have to search for those things, but they'd be saved within your dashboard, as well as any events you'll be attending, and any courses you complete that we'll talk about in a minute. There's also a new tab where you can download any course completion certificates that it will be saved also in this tab. So if you're looking to share any professional development that you've accomplished with TIG, then you can also do that here.
So the first tab, I'm sorry, as you go across the website, focuses on graduation for all. And this is really the area that highlights the improvement work around graduation in Wisconsin. You can see on the tab, there's information around indicators 1 and 2, access to the graduation rate improvement planning tool, and information around culturally and linguistically responsive practices. On the next slide, I'm going to actually share a resource with you for that. But I did just want to highlight as well, Pam, can you go back for just a second? Sorry. Thank you. This video, which we don't have time to watch today, but this is available as a support to talking about graduation with families. So under the graduation tab, you see the culturally responsive transition practices. And this resource is directly linked on this slide. It is a resource that provides school districts and particularly teachers the opportunity to reflect on their culturally responsive practices as it relates to transition planning for youth with IEPs in the PTP. The questions that are found on the reflection can be also found under the best practices button within the PTP online application. But the reflective questions are there to help teachers recognize and incorporate culturally responsive practices into their transition planning. The IEP team is and also reflecting on if the IEP team is ensuring the unique needs and cultural backgrounds of diverse students and their families. This type of planning really works to foster positive relationships with students and their families and encourages family engagement in the transition planning process, which I can say from the work that we have with our school districts, that has been something that has come up in multiple districts, talking about what are ways that we can work to engage a diverse population of students. So the GRIP continues to be a critical tool for Wisconsin school districts as our statewide data continues to tell us that there's a gap in graduation rates for students with IEPs and students without IEPs. And we do know that graduation rate data is lagged, and the way that it's reported, we're actually looking at data from the 2021-2022 school year. This slide here that you're looking at demonstrates the gap in graduation rates for students with disabilities over the last 5 years. And I do want to highlight that we do have some growth to celebrate for, as you can see, from between the 2019 to the 2022 school year. In addition, we do also know that students with IEPs have the right to special education beyond age 18 if the IEP team deems that necessary. And when we look at rates using the 6- and 7-year cohorts, we do continue to see a gap that exists. For example, the 6-year cohort graduation rates for students with disabilities in the 21-22 school year was 81.1, and the 7-year cohort rate was 84.7. So even with that extra time, we are seeing still more than a 10% gap in graduation rates. This is really an opportunity for us to dig in and identify who are the students who are not graduating and conduct root cause analysis in districts to determine why. So as we go through the next couple of slides, I'm going to speak more in depth to the GRIP process and how TIG could help support school districts through the GRIP process. The Graduation Rate Improvement Planning Tool, or the GRIP, is a free online assessment and planning tool that's available to school districts to positively impact the graduation and dropout rate of students. How we do that is through learning about culturally responsive and nationally recognized evidence-based practices, completing a self-assessment of current evidence-based practices that support graduation, and engaging in an in-depth graduation improvement planning process and developing an action plan. The GRIP was created from research by the National Dropout Prevention Center and the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, the collaborative, and also highlights evidence-based resources and tools to improve graduation outcomes for students. This online tool can be used as a part of the district's continuous improvement planning process under IDEA as well as ESSA. The GRIP includes 3 pillars of evidence-based improvement strategies that you can see on the screen: transition planning, mentoring, and career and technical education. At this time, TIG is working with 19 districts and schools to implement a graduation rate improvement plan. Of these schools, 12 of our schools are focusing on mentoring, 4 are working to build capacity around transition planning, and 3 are deepening their engagement in career and technical education for students with IEPs. We are currently working with school districts identified under IDEA to improve indicators 1 and 2 and collaborate with schools that also have CSI identifications under ESSA. This really is a timely discussion because I know that preliminary joint federal notifications have just been released. And I just want to highlight again that the GRIP is a continuous improvement support that districts can engage in to focus on IDEA notifications, particularly for points lost in graduation and dropout. So the first pillar that the graduation rate improvement planning tool looks at is transition planning. And we look at transition planning as helping students with disabilities and their families think about life after high school. This process helps students to be able to identify long-range goals, design their high school experience to ensure that the students gain skills and connections that they need after high school to achieve these goals. And then true in-depth transition planning also works to increase active learning for students with IEPs.
Okay, and then we'll talk about the next tab on the Transition Improvement Grant website is transition planning. So as you can see, there are a number of resources under this area. Most importantly, or most looked at, is the post-secondary transition plan, but there's also transition services, WIOA, summary of performance, age-appropriate transition assessments, the resource that Jen talked about, culturally and linguistically responsive practices, and then CIE. One particular resource that gets utilized a lot and has a lot of attention is transition programming beyond age 18. So the transition programming beyond age 18 is, like I said, a hot topic. TIG has created the transition programming beyond 18 guidance for users to be able to access. This is available on a Google site or a printable PDF. And then we also have a recording that will walk you through the guidance. And if you click on the pictures on this slide, then you can access these resources in that way too. So a well-developed individualized plan for students 18 to 21 really equips the student and their family with the skills, the knowledge, and the resources that they need to succeed in life after high school. And this guide really digs into getting started, state and federal requirements, team conversations. It includes partnerships along with resource mapping and sample student schedules, what a day might look like, and many additional resources as well. Beginning with transition planning as an evidence-based practice, I'd like to cover some statewide data that we now have available from the PTP application. The slide illustrates the trends in education and training goals in the PTP over the last 5 years. At the top of the graph, the light blue trend line on the job training includes registered apprenticeship and is growing pretty rapidly. The next most common secondary education training goal is to attend a technical or community college. And then both this category as well as the four-year universities are seeing a decline in student plans after high school. That's really one area that TIG would like to focus in on. The data used to create this slide is gathered from the new data dashboard, and the DPI special education team and TIG are working on to develop this. This dashboard will allow DPI to do annual statewide analysis of transition planning, including post-secondary goals and transition services. And then in addition, TIG will be able to use this tool with Wisconsin school districts as they reflect on their transition planning practices and look to improve outcomes for students with IEPs. So stay tuned for more information, and we hope to have that up and going by the 24-25 school year. For the most recent school year, we saw similar patterns in the 5-year trends in education and training goals. The most common goal for the 22-23 school year was moving on to work, followed pretty closely behind by planning to attend a technical college. I find that more of our students are seeking career opportunities and further technical training to impact their long-term career goals. So we're excited to see that trend going upwards. When we look at employment goals, the most common career cluster in the area of arts, audio, visual, video, technology, and communications. We see a lot of students that now want to be bloggers and vloggers, and so it doesn't necessarily surprise us. The cluster includes pathways such as technology and film, journalism, broadcasting, and printing technology. The second most common cluster is in agriculture, food, and natural resources. Further research will compare if these career clusters are aligned with the fastest growing pathways and industries. And that's something that we hope to start doing with our county communities on transition as well, is looking at these trends. And then finally, we have a breakdown of the 6 transition services categories. So in the 22-23 school year, the most common categories of transition services in the PTP were job exploration counseling services and instruction and self-advocacy. And interestingly enough, work-based learning experiences was the 4th out of the 6 possible categories for transition services. So remember that the most common post-secondary education and training goal was to go to work after high school. However, we are not seeing work-based learning during high school as one of the most implemented transition services. Research tells us that a student engaging in work-based learning during high school makes it much more likely that a student will be competitively employed once they leave high school. So certainly a consideration we want to think deeper about and consider. And DPI are really excited about the opportunity this dashboard can provide to us to align transition services and support of students' post-secondary goals as we move forward into the next year. And then, as most of you know, and I stated before, that PA specialists review PTPs on a monthly basis. So what we're seeing so far this year from July through December is that we reviewed 17,122 PTPs that were submitted. After TIG's monthly review and changes made by the districts, we only had 39 that were non-compliant using the other category. We are certainly succeeding in this compliance, although we know that compliance for post-secondary transition planning is 100%. So we really do strive to make that. And generally as a state, we hit between 98 and 99%. So really close. The pie graph on the right of the slide, though, shows the number of PTPs with other chosen in either the area of measurable post-secondary goals or transition services that were reviewed and non-compliant from that July to December date of 2023. As stated, we are meeting expectations, although, however, in a longitudinal study, TIG continually sees an uptick of non-compliant PTPs from January till June. And so we really ask that you be aware of that and thoughtful when you're reviewing PTPs throughout this next semester, so that we can try to keep the other common questions down. There's also the most common question that we get is around the use of other. So on this slide, you'll see that there's a link for a resource that TIG has developed that talks about the statement or the other statement and some guidance around that. So please feel free to utilize that as we come into the next semester. And then, as I had mentioned, we do have a transition coordinator network as well, which can answer a lot of those questions that transition coordinators, it doesn't have to be someone that has the title of transition coordinator that attends these meetings, but any educator that focuses with students with disabilities around transition from high school to life after high school. So this transition coordinator meets the last Tuesday of each month. Right now, we have about 180 members that either join or on the listserv to gain more information. So if you are interested in more information about that for yourselves or others on your team, please reach out to me or one of our TA specialists to learn more.
So now we're going to jump into the second pillar under the graduation rate improvement plan, and that is mentoring. Currently, 63% of the schools that we're engaged with are implementing mentoring programs. One thing that we have found as we have been going through the data analysis and root cause analysis with teams is that relationship aspect of mentoring has come up as a big need with our schools, even the ones who ended up not selecting mentoring as their pillar. Districts who are currently engaged in the mentoring pillar are focusing on evidence-based mentoring practices, have adopted Check and Connect, or are utilizing graduation coaching, or we have worked with schools to create their own method of mentoring using evidence and research-based practices highlighted by the National Mentoring Alliance. Data collected by the schools around mentoring, we are starting to see significant positive impacts on attendance and behavioral referrals for mentees. Evidence of what this research tells us: when kids are connected at school, they do better in school. So we do work with our schools to identify student outcomes that they are capturing, and we are seeing growth for our mentoring schools. The final pillar under the graduation rate improvement planning tool is the career and technical education pillar. One thing I do want to highlight is research shows us that career and technical education engagement is the most impactful of the three pillars that we have. Of the schools utilizing this pillar, they are focused on Zello and Universal Design for Learning. A small percentage of the districts are engaged in CTE. So we want to explore why CTE opportunities are so impactful for students with IEPs. NTAC-C, or the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, the collaborative, has identified CTE as currently the only evidence-based practice for improving not only graduation rates for students with IEPs, but also post-school outcomes related to engaging in employment and post-secondary education. This means that this strategy has been researched and proven to be effective across classrooms and communities. In addition to NTAC's research, the National Dropout Prevention Center has also cited CTE engagement as a research-based dropout prevention strategy. In fact, they did conduct a meta-analysis in 2018, I believe, and they found that CTE is the single most impactful strategy to increase graduation rate for students who may be at risk of dropping out. So this evidence-based practice really gives us a lot of bang for our buck. The national graduation rate for students taking 2 or more CTE courses in a career pathway is 95%, and that's 10% higher than the national average of high school graduation rates. So note that this is also higher than all of the trends in graduation rates that we just reviewed from Wisconsin. For Wisconsin students, we are seeing significant growth in the participation rate of career and technical education coursework, particularly since post-COVID. The engagement for students with disabilities, however, has been slower to grow than our students without disabilities. In fact, we can see on the bottom part of the graph, the green line, it's almost stagnant. Ultimately, engaging all students, especially those with IEPs and more CTE opportunities, will only benefit students and outcomes in the long run. So defining what that means to engage in a CTE or career and technical education experience is very broad and complex. So that's one of the things that we've noticed as we've been working with our schools. There's not a set thing that you do. So we really have been identifying with schools what is going to be the most impactful based on their root cause analysis and develop their action plan from there. CTE can mean different things from different students, especially when we're factoring disability related needs in and the outside supports that they might also be engaged in. The department defines CTE as a CTE concentrator as a student who has completed at least 2 CTE courses in a single career pathway throughout high school. But CTE also encompasses work-based learning opportunities that Pam spoke of before, and career and technical student organizations such as Skills USA or HOSA. This slide here outlines a few examples of what research tells us are effective practices for CTE, particularly when we're looking at engaging students with IEPs. For those of you who are familiar with the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, the collaborative predictors of post-school success, we see a lot of these practices that are listed here also as predictors of post-school success for students with IEPs. That's why you do also see those alignment as you're looking at the transition services that are as a part of the PTP. If you are more want to dig in deeper on NTAC's predictors, there is a link in the note page that Pam will send out with our final presentation.
Now we'll take a little time to talk about our middle tab, post-school outcomes, which is also indicator 14. Indicator 14 focuses on the transition of students with IEPs from high school to post-school life. So an indicator 14 survey is conducted once a year after a student with an IEP has exited high school. The survey results can and should be utilized to assess if the students exiting after high school had an effect on transition planning and the services that it provided upon leaving school as a student moves into their adult life. So for example, did the student meet their measurable post-secondary goals in the area of employment, education and training, and independent living? In the next slide, we'll highlight some of the indicator 14 maps that DPI created to assist users in assessing the process. The Indicator 14 post-school survey provides information around education, competitive employment, and engagement rates of students who have exited high school 1 year out. The DPI has created an interactive map that describes the rates of former students with IEPs in higher education, competitive employment, and other post-secondary education and training. So in addition, this map also visualizes the rates for other employment and not meeting indicator 14 criteria from the school district level and the county level. These maps are a really powerful tool that visualizes the post-secondary outcome trends across the state. And we encourage schools, counties, county communities on transition teams and other transition partners to examine the trends in their local area. When utilizing these maps, think about the following questions. Do the outcome percentages differ from neighboring districts or counties? And is there growth in any one post-secondary outcome category and declines in any other areas? And this slide includes the 2023 unduplicated indicator 14 survey results. The symbols in the third row indicate the movement of each category and if it is a desired movement. So for example, we want more students to be engaged in higher education or competitively employed, and we want less students to not meet criteria. We did see some negative movement in a few categories. The largest, a decline in higher education engagement by 3% of respondents as compared to our 2022 survey. Competitive employment and other post-secondary remain about the same. Taking a longitudinal look at post-secondary outcomes, we're seeing a general decline in higher education engagement, as we've talked about. And some of this may be due to the rising response in the rates in indicator 14, especially in 2017. However, overall, we continue seeing fewer students pursuing higher education 1 year post-exit from school. Conversely, we are seeing all-time highs in competitive employment rates, which might explain why we're seeing that drop in higher education. So in addition, we are also seeing the gap close here for Black male students. A key takeaway from these trends is preparing our students for careers is a critical need in education. And ensuring our students with IEPs have access to robust transition planning, as well as career and technical education and experiences, sets our students up for post-school success. In addition to TIG, PI and the state of Wisconsin make targeted investments in post-school outcomes for students with IEPs. These investments are represented by 3 different transition-related programs. And I want to point out that we did not title these grants. So they get confusing along with TIG and the other acronyms that come along with these grants. This slide includes the basics about each program and the ways in which they can support transition in your local school district. And for more information on these programs, you can go to the DPI transition website, which is a link on the bottom of this page on the left-hand corner. Applications for the Transition Readiness Grant are due May 1st. The competition for the 24-25 Transition Readiness Grant is open now, and the applications are available and posted on the DPI website. The 24 virtual Q&A webinar for all interested applicants will be on Wednesday, March 14th at 10 o'clock. So if you have questions about the application itself, that's the time to get those questions answered. The webinar will also be recorded though, and so it will be on the DPI website within a few days after the event. So if you're not able to make it, that's another source that you can utilize. Okay, so our second middle tab is self-advocacy. So students are given an opportunity to practice self-advocacy and self-determination skills, are empowered, as we know, to express their preferences, interests, needs, and strengths. We had a meeting with higher education not that long ago, and they continually talk about how important self-advocacy is, and that being one of the major reasons that students succeed when they go on to higher education. That along with learning technology, making sure that they understand the technology before they get there. But I can't stress enough about the importance of self-advocacy. We're going to go through some changes with our self-advocacy suite in this next year. We have 3 curriculums currently on this tab: the Speak Up, Self-Directed Transition Learning Lesson Plans, and the New Way of Thinking. And based on our capacity within our team, we're just not able to assure that these curriculums are always up to date. So we will be keeping our self-directed CCR IEP guide along with the Wisconsin Transition app. And then along with that, we'll be adding the TIG self-advocacy guidance. Excuse me. And this is a toolkit that has highlighted resources from our state and national partners. The resource includes a definition of self-advocacy, implementing self-advocacy, assessments, student-led IEP information, curricula, activities, as well as a student voice. As I said, the Wisconsin Transition app will continue to be available. And that tool really focuses on mirroring the post-secondary transition plan. So it's a great way to share the post-secondary transition plan with students and with their families so that they can come prepared to join in the conversation and have a voice at IEP meetings. Some new things that the app has went, or the changes that are being made, is that the app is now available in Spanish as well. And then it further mirrors the post-secondary transition plan to make that an easier transition when talking about the components of the PTP and the IEP meetings. And then also a change that was made is that a student now does not need to complete the app in one sitting, but is able to come back to it. When you go into the app, you'll be able to see that there is an option for them to click a button. They'll get a code, which they do need to make sure they keep track of that code to be able to come back into the app. And the reason we do that is for confidentiality reasons. And so that's why the app isn't able to be saved and come back later, but that there is a code for them to come back to the app at a different time. And then our second to the last tab is online learning, and TIG really has a variety of online technical assistance and professional development opportunities. So let's take a look at some of those. TIG has been fortunate to be able to partner with UW Whitewater City Project to create our courses. And as you can see, we have 6 different courses that are offered through TIG for professional development. The first one being the Introduction to the Post-Secondary Transition Plan and the Implementing the PTP. And those 2 courses are self-paced. So that means that a person could join those courses or take those courses at any point in time throughout the year. The introductory course is about 2 to 3 hours long and is really just the basics of the PTP. So if you have staff that are not familiar with the PTP, that's a great place to start. The Implementing the PTP is a course that we're going to revamp a little bit this next year. But the way it sits right now is that it really just gives a more in-depth overview of the different sections or components of the PTP. And we're really going to look at some more operationalizing of that course so that when individuals take it, they're thinking more how to implement and some best practices versus just meeting compliance. Our next course is a Career and Life Readiness course. And that course is a team-led course. That's our only course that is team-led. So TIG staff walk you through scheduled self-paced opportunities. And so even though that's still self-paced, there are deadline dates of when each module opens and when it ends and requirements within that class. And then there's job coaching for the paraprofessional. That one is self-paced. Anyone can take that at any time. And then we have the Indicator 14 interviewer training for new interviewers, and then a refresher training for those that have been previously interviewers. And that course will be opening up probably end of April, beginning of May, to prepare for the upcoming Indicator 14 surveys and getting interviewers trained. So if individuals are interested in becoming an interviewer, they would contact myself or Jenny Jacobs to find out more information about that. And then, as I had said, other is one of the most common questions that we get. So on this online technical assistance tab, you would find more information on really the questions we get around the PTP application. Other is coming soon, so we hope to have that posted in the next few weeks. But then if we look at the PTP application, the questions, this is really a great way to refresh our memories if we have questions about the PTP and not have to wait for an answer. So as you can see right now, we have 6 different micro-learning opportunities. We have revise, submitted versus create new PTP, deleting a PTP record, the WISE ID map, moving students in the PTP application, student history, and PTP security diagram. So again, a resource on other will be coming soon. And these take, about 3 minutes or less. And then we have our transition partners tab, which is our last content area. This provides a list of our local, state, and national partners. And then along with that, some contact information as well. And it looks at some of our highlights of our pages too. So if we look at this slide, one of the areas that we continue to see is that referral process between vocational rehabilitation and school districts. And that's really trending down on the number of referrals that are happening. And in the 2023 joint CIE report, that indicates that employment rates for people with disabilities is improving when they connect to vocational rehabilitation. To assist with that collaboration, TIG and DPI, along with DVR, are hosting a collaboration event on April 18th at the Kalahari in the Dells. And then we're also having a bonus mix and mingle the night before just to share insights, ideas, and build relationships with like-minded individuals. So we encourage people to sign up for that. I think currently we have about 80 people that are registered, and registration will go through April 12th. So if you'd like any more information on that, let me know as well. And then the last thing is our county communities on transition. So if you are not familiar with a county community on transition, that is an opportunity for school district staff, families, youth, service systems, and like community-based organizations that will come together and talk about successes, barriers, needs and transition within their county. And unfortunately, we have seen a decline in about 20% of our CCOTs since COVID. And so TIG is working to really build CCOTs back up. One of the biggest barriers is that many of these teams do not have school representation on their team. And this really is an opportunity to be able to share the needs of the students, and having all of those members or outside agencies around the table and community members to share voices and engage in that work. So if you have more information that you would like around CCOTs, please let me know. We will be having a CCOT capacity building event starting on October 30th. And that will be held in the Dells as well. And we'll have registration for that soon. The other thing that TIG and the YCOT, it's called, which is made up of state level individuals that focus on transition, as well as some local individuals. We're developing what's called a Wisconsin CTIP, and that is a tool that will be utilized by CCOTs to build around interagency teams and also transition planning. And if you want to engage in your local CCOT, you'll see this blue map of Wisconsin on this slide. And that slide contains all of the counties. By clicking on your county, it will tell you who the facilitator of that county is. But some of them, I will warn you, are left vacant because they are not currently up and running. So along with that, if there's any information that you would like to be a facilitator, we can work on that as well. And then our last slide shares our full TIG team and how to contact us. So if you have any questions, please let us know. And I think we have a minute to spare. I know that was a quick conversation and a lot of talking by Jen and I, but we really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share this information with all of you.
All right. Well, thank you, Pam and Jen. I know we do have one question in the chat, but we'll check the parking lot as well. Polly had a question about other and why that's needed if we're not supposed to use it.
So other really focuses on about that 3% of students that it may be very applicable for. So we don't want to take away that option of other, but really utilizing it in a way that is for that small percentage of students that need something more than what's in our drop-down menus. So most of the time you would see other used for students with pretty significant healthcare needs. That might be a good example of when other would be utilized. But also in saying that, we also want to be cautious not to use just the radio buttons, but to make sure that we're providing best practice transition plans for students, not just compliant ones.
We're going to open it up. Any other questions that are coming from the field or food for thought?
And like Jen had said, if it's helpful, because we know we went through this information really fast, we can also share a PowerPoint that has notes in it. So you have that information at your fingertips as well. So
That would be helpful.
Okay.
I would say too, if questions come up about something that you heard about that you'd like to engage in, or you'd like to hear more about the events Pam talked about, or the continuous improvement support that TIG could provide, please feel free to reach out to us as well.
Okay.
And I
That
see we
sounds
have
good.
one hand
See
raised.
that Jen has her hand raised. Sorry, Tracy.
Oh, yep. Okay, go ahead, Jen.
Just a quick question about that dashboard that you mentioned. Is that going to will we be able, is that going to be affected by cell size at all? I guess is the easiest way to ask that question. Will small districts still be able to get some specific information from that dashboard, or will they not be able to utilize it if they're too small?
Are you thinking the indicator 14 dashboard?
No, the one that's coming up with the trend data and all of those kinds of things. Was that the indicator 14? Sorry.
No, that's actually indicator 13. So there's a new Power BI report being built.
Yeah.
And so districts will not be able to take that information or get that information on their own. It will need to be done through TIG staff or DPI staff. And so with cell size, it will go directly to the school district. So we should be okay.
Okay, great. Thanks for the clarification, Pam.
Now, we're also looking at that for countywide data. And when we look at countywide data, that's when we have more concerns about cell size, so that we're making sure we have the confidentiality of the student in mind.
Thanks for asking that, Jen. And obviously you've built a need regarding looking at graduation rates, why this work is so important to, I think the resources you shared are amazing. The interactive maps, the connection to CTE, just the employment data too. And yeah, there's good work to be done yet and good trends moving forward. So again, we want to have you reach out if there are any questions regarding the content that was shared or if you need connection to further resources. But thank you again, Pam and Jen, for joining us today. If there are no more questions, we are just going to kind of close out on behalf of RSN, DPI, and WCAST. We want to thank you for joining us this morning. We will remind you that our next connection is on April 10th. That is a 3-hour long connection starting at 9 o'clock. On that, we will have Eva Shaw and Katie Berg talking about the SNS and ES3 work for neurodiverse students. We will also have Missy Emler joining us for Universal Design for Learning content, and then Carolyn Rosing and Sherry Silla for WISPE. So a busy agenda for our next connection. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you in April.